Hey guys and gals, this is Bloggy of the Broken Legion of Gamers, and in this video, I'm going to go over the different types of airbrushes, how they're best used, and the benefits of each of these three types of airbrushes. Now, when it comes to airbrushes, there's two different types of actions, single action and dual action, and there's also a few different types of ways to feed the airbrush. You can either do siphon feed or gravity feed, and then there's the less common side feed. Now we're going to go over all these types of airbrushes, and we're going to talk about the benefits and some of the drawbacks of some of these types of airbrushes. Now, the first one I'm going to go over is the cheapest of the three in front of me. This is the only single action airbrush that we're going to be going over. The reason why it's called a single action is here's your trigger. When you pull the trigger, pulling it down activates both the air and the paint. So, pull down, air, it's spraying air and paint all in a single pull. Now in a dual action, like this Master Series S622, which this is a dual action siphon feed, when you pull down on... Okay, there's something wrong with this. When you pull down on the trigger like this, only the air starts going. It doesn't start feeding paint until you pull back on the trigger like this. Hence, dual action. One action, two actions. And these dual action is definitely the better of the two, but that doesn't go to say that there aren't going to be some people out there that this will be the end-all, be-all, and this will be the most that they'll need. This is a cheapy single action. You can't even put this onto a compressor. I tried. You see, the threads are totally different. I had an adapter that I was able to screw onto here, which gave that type of threads where it could go onto a compressor. But the problem is, with that adapter, I wasn't able to put this is your paint jar for a siphon feed gun. I wasn't able to get the what's it called? I wasn't able to get the paint jar on with the adapter on. Now, oh God. Okay, I gotta clean this one. Oh great, now I got the paint jar stuck on the... Great. Okay. We're gonna leave... This paint jar has a whole bunch of paint crusted on that I gotta clean off, so we'll use, yes, this paint jar for all of the examples, because, and this one doesn't even fit on there. Okay, well, we're just gonna imagine that there's a paint jar on this. This is a really cheap airbrush, but what it does come with is this hose, which we're gonna... as you can tell, I've never used this airbrush because, yeah, I have a compressor. This airbrush came to me in that kit I unboxed last year, and just... the kit included a compressor. I don't even know why they They included this airbrush. It was advertised as a 3 airbrush kit. I guess it was just to hit the quota. But what you do with this airbrush, you put the hose on the airbrush like this, and then you put your paint jar on here. Okay. And then this airbrush comes with this adapter piece right here, which you can go to a hobby store or something like Hobby Lobby or your local hobby shop and get what's called a can of propel. You screw this onto the top of the propel, and that replaces the need for an air compressor. It's a really cheap, inexpensive way to get into airbrushing without having to buy a compressor. The cheapest I've seen compressors is $50, and they can go up all the way up to ridiculous costs. But you go and get a $10 can of propel. You screw this onto the can of propel, screw this all the way down, bam, there's your compressor, and you got yourself a single stage airbrush for whatever you want to do with it. For me, the use of this, God forbid my compressor goes down, I could go, if I don't have enough money to buy another compressor or I'm in a pinch, I can go get a can of propel, and I can still prime my minis with a can of propel, and I could pretty much, this is just a fail-safe to me. This to me is still better than a rattle can. I don't like rattle cans. I had a bad experience with a bad can of Krylon that just destroyed 2 flash kits, and that's when I ordered my airbrush setup, and basically have not looked back at rattle cans since, and I will not. This right here with a can of propel is definitely better than any rattle can. And for the cost of probably this, you can get an airbrush setup like this for like $20. That's about the cost of 2 or 3 rattle cans. And you will be guaranteed to never destroy a miniature with a bad rattle can ever again. I know what you're thinking. You can always just bathe it in simple green and possibly fix the problem. But what happens if the simple green doesn't work? This to me is better than any rattle can. And yeah, it's a $20 airbrush. You can get it at TCP Global for probably 15 to 20 bucks. This setup right here. Now we'll move on to the dual action siphon feed. This right here is a dual action siphon feed airbrush. This is pretty much your next step to that. It's a little bit cheaper than the gravity fed, and it does have its pros. I prefer gravity fed, but the pro to a siphon feed, you can get bigger jars than this, and then bam, you can have more paint on demand than with the gravity feed. That's the only bonus, I think. To me, the gravity feeds just feed better. This is basically this right here, the model G233. It's pretty much the same as this airbrush, just the gravity feed one, and it's only a few dollars more to order. This cost me, I think, 33 bucks. This cost me, if I were to buy it now, the siphon feed one, if I were to buy it now, would cost me $30. These are still good. They do serve their points. And this is an airbrush that I still use. It's a master airbrush. they're good brushes. These are probably the cheapest brushes I would ever consider getting. And if you're just priming and base coating miniatures for your own use, this is probably the most expensive that you'll ever have to spend. But if you're a paint commission, you might want to look up to like an Iwata Eclipse or a Harder Steinbeck Evolution. But for the simple hobby, it's just priming and base coating. This is perfect. This one right here is what would be considered a dual action gravity feed. The reason why it's called a gravity feed, you put your paint inside this pot right here. You can load it all the way up and then go to town. Some of the more expensive gravity feed airbrushes, you can get bowls that screw off. You can put smaller bowls on or a bigger bowl. But this one right here, as you can see, it's welded on or cast on. And this is basically the only thing you're going to need, because the amount of primer that you can put in this bowl, you're going to get 4 or 5 miniatures out of it before you have to add primer and to finish out a 10 miniature squad. A squad of 10 miniatures. This is, for me, the end-all be-all. I love the gravity feeds. They flow so much better. I love this one because this right here, the tighter you screw it, the harder it is to pull the trigger. You back it out a little bit. Actually, no. Right here. This, you can loosen this, and you can play with this, and on both this one and the dual action siphon feed, you play with this, and you can mess with your trigger play. You loosen it up, and it gets a little lighter. You tighten it, and it's a little bit harder to pull. And then, okay, this right back here, you screw it in, and the trigger barely moves. You go like this, and you can pull it back more. This is pretty, and the more you pull back on the trigger, the more paint flow goes through. Remember, dual action. Push down like that, the air starts. Pull back, the paint starts. You just unscrew this all the way, and you're throwing out a ton of paint. These dual action airbrushes, you have better control over how much paint you're flowing out, how smooth your lines are, and they're just a heck of a lot easier to use than a single action airbrush. The single action airbrushes still serve a purpose. This right here is perfect just for throwing down a priming coat, and if you're gonna be brush painting down base coats, just prime with that and you're fine. These dual actions, they give you more control, and they're a lot better. Well, this is basically all I wanted to do with this video, was give you guys a basic run through of the types of airbrushes, their pros and cons. And in future videos, I'm gonna go delve deeper into airbrushing, to the point where I'm gonna show you guys how I clean my airbrushes and how I use them to prime and base coat. I'm gonna run through the basics. When I'm done with this series, you won't be airbrush experts, but it'll give you a general idea of where to start, and I'll show you what works for me. What works for me might not work for you. Keep that in mind. But that's all for this video, guys. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. And if you want to be notified anytime I put up any future content, hit that bell icon. This way, YouTube will notify you anytime I put up a video in the future. You guys have a nice night, and I'll see you guys soon.